Hey, this is Dr. Joni. Let's talk. Today, let's talk about dyslexia. What is dyslexia? Now, I think I can talk about this one because I have dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning disability in reading comprehension. Now, a lot of people think they know what dyslexia is because they'll say, oh, I know what dyslexia is. That's when you like flip B's and D's and your numbers flip or you read backwards and all that other kind of stuff. Actually, that's not dyslexia. That's being dyslexic, okay? So that is a visual issue when you're flipping and you're reading things backwards. Now, can you be both? Yeah, okay? But dyslexia itself is when you read something and you have no clue, like I can't comprehend what it is I just read. And being dyslexic, if I'm flipping letters or reading backwards or skipping letters, again, that's a visual issue, but it's going to make it hard for me to understand what I read too if I'm dyslexic. So anyway, this was a really quick answer to your question. If you have dyslexia or if your child tends to read and not be able to either write down what they've read or to answer questions about what they've read, whether that be verbal or in written, they may in fact have dyslexia, which is a disability in reading comprehension. Should you get that checked? Absolutely, because there's a lot of things that we can do if your child has dyslexia to help them to be successful in the learning environment. Dyslexia is a neurodevelopmental issue. If you have it, you're born with it, and it's something that's going to plague you for the rest of your life until you figure it out. So we want you to do that. So the next question is, well, where do I go to figure it out? You need to have your child tested by a clinical psychologist. Now, here's something you need to know. Your child can be tested in the school environment by a school psychologist. And oftentimes, if your child is really struggling in the academic environment, the school may even recommend or suggest that they test. A school psychologist, however, is not a clinical psychologist, and they cannot offer a clinical diagnosis. Dyslexia is a clinical diagnosis. So what will happen if you allow the school to test your child? They'll do the same testing batteries probably that a clinical psychologist would do outside of school, but the school psychologist will come back and say that your child has a specific learning disability. Now, why they call it a specific learning disability when in fact they are being non-specific, that's a question for them. I'm not going to answer that one. But the point is, there is no clinical designation to a specific learning disability. The way to get around that, ask for a copy of the testing results from the school and take those to a clinical psychologist. Oftentimes, that clinical psychologist will be able to use that same data if it is presented within a year and can offer a clinical diagnosis. So in other words, they can take that specific learning disability that the school designated, and with the data, the clinical psychologist can tell you whether that's actually dyslexia or dyscalculia or dysgraphia. They can be more specific as to what type of learning disability that is. Why is that important? Is because sometimes you can get additional resources outside of the school environment that may even in fact be paid for by your health insurance if you have a clinical diagnosis. Bottom line, if your child is struggling with reading or reading comprehension, we need to get that looked at. We need to figure out what is going on. And in order to figure that out, they need cognitive and achievement testing, either by your school psychologist or by a clinical psychologist. Dyslexia is treatable. There are a lot of support organizations in the country and in the world to support individuals with dyslexia, and I want to make sure you or your child gets the support you need to be successful. If you have another question, don't hesitate. Go down to the Contact Me section of this app, pose your question, and I'll get right back to you. Let's talk some more later.